Hello everyone. What can you see when you take a look at this picture? Yeah, you might see a strong man with a strong body, full of focus, energy and determination, ready to fight in front of thousands of people in a, let's put it this way, very unusual outfit, but a strong haircut. But it says on social media, you see the perfect picture and you think, wow. But as we all know, hopefully, the reality looks quite different. If I have to describe this picture and its deeper truth, I only see an empty and confused man living in a broken and painful body whose big dream of becoming a professional wrestling superstar comes slowly to an end. This man was me 10 years ago in Las Vegas. I'm sure when you think about Vegas, you think about fun and having the best time of your life or getting married with a person you have never met before. But when I hear Las Vegas, I only remember my darkest time. For days, I sat alone in my big hotel room at the Stratosphere Hotel, and I couldn't barely move my body out of pain. I stood at a crossroad, not knowing where to go from here. Should I stay in Sin City and keep on working even harder on winning the jackpot in professional wrestling, no matter what my body was trying to tell me in the language of pain? Or should I go home as a broken man? I went home, back to what is considered as one of the most beautiful countries in the world, Switzerland. The place where I grew up, along with my parents and my elder brother. We lived in a very big house, surrounded by the abundance of nature, and we basically had it all. But from a very early age, I felt I don't belong here. See, when other kids my age read comic books, I was interested in professional wrestling, Buddhism, and Zen meditation. And when other kids played soccer, I stood in the corner and asked myself the question, what is this life all about? Yes, I felt alone and misunderstood. I even remember one time the teacher asked me in front of the class, Stefan, what do you want to become when you're older? And I said, I either want to become a professional wrestler in the United States of America or a Buddhist monk in Asia. Imagine his face expression. It was the same face expression my father, the successful businessman, gave to me when I told him about my dreams. And I remember one time, instead of going on vacation with other kids, my parents had to bring me to a Buddhist monastery where I sat down with the monks and meditated for 2 weeks. But as time went by and I got more interested in girls, I put everything into becoming a professional wrestler. This sport, mixed with entertainment, made me feel completely alive and took me out of my own reality living in Switzerland. But I was still a 14-year-old kid, so I had a major to-do list in front of me until I could finally chase my dream. But when I was 20 years old, I was ready to go, and I was ready to really dive in to become a professional wrestler and to sign a contract for the biggest wrestling company in the world, located in the United States of America, the WWE. But what does this business really mean? Wrestling means to earn your spot. And just like in life, you can only earn something if you have sowed the seeds. No one is waiting for you, and this business owes you nothing. You have to promote yourself and get yourself in the right position that the right people will notice you over and over again. This is an extra mile sport where you have to make lots of sacrifices, and it is a sport that has no off-season and doesn't accept any excuses. So let me take you on my journey of how I entered this business and faced this nearly impossible challenge as a guy coming from Switzerland with no wrestling background whatsoever, and where this whole journey did lead me. So let's face it. Here was the reality, and there was the dream. I firmly believed, and I still do, that if the dream is bigger than the obstacles, you will find a way. And of course, I didn't see any option to stay in Switzerland, so I had to leave my home country in order to turn my dream into reality. And the first step of my journey led me straight to Vienna, Austria. I wrestled at a wrestling school for 2 weeks, and for the first time in my life, as I stood in this wrestling ring, I knew I have arrived. After 2 weeks, the wrestling coach came to me and he said, Stefan, you have the heart and you have the talent, and you should continue to chase your dream. So with a suitcase full of dreams, I went back to Switzerland and I started to work at a local gym to A, finance my dream and to coach other people, and to B, get in the best shape possible. But as soon as I made enough money, I packed my bags and I left Switzerland for good. I moved from a big house to a tiny little apartment in a not so beautiful part in Germany. I exchanged living in a big room to share a tiny room with 2 other people and 3 other pets. And what seems like a big downgrade on the surface became a huge upgrade to me, because I was one step closer to living my dream. And in Germany, I went to the gym twice a day and I found a wrestling school where I could wrestle on a daily basis. And I did that day in, day out, 7 days a week. After a couple of months, I had my first wrestling matches in front of a handful of people. And I traveled all over in Germany to participate in local shows. I did that for 12 months, for 1 year to be exact. And after 12 months, I decided to really make the big step now. I signed up at a very tough but very famous wrestling school in Atlanta, Georgia, in the United States. And I went there for 3 months. This is the maximum of time that you can spend in the United States as a tourist. So as I took the plane and I entered this wrestling school in the USA, reality hit me straight in the face. I was completely ignored by each and every one in there, because I was just known as the guy coming from Europe. And then I knew I have to work harder than anybody else, and I made sure that I am always the first one who shows up at practice and the last one who closes the door behind him. I did that every single day. I trained for hours and I earned my respect. After 2 months, this wrestling school became my home away from home, and those people who ignored me first became my second family. And very shortly, before I had to leave back to Europe, the owner of the school came to me and he said, I just made a phone call with the WWE. They want to check you out and they invite you for an 8-hour tryout. This was like a dream come true. This is what I worked so hard for. So with a rental car, I drove into the deepest south of Georgia and I knocked on the doors of the WWE. After 8 hours of being tested, trained, and drilled, and being looked at of one of the best coaches in the world, and as I stood in the ring with wrestlers I only knew from TV, the head coach came to me and he said, we really like your style, Stefan. We are going to invite you to stay with us for 1 week in 2 weeks. So there was the chance, but I could not take it because of the visa situation. I had to leave the United States 48 hours later, and I left very devastated and with a broken heart. But the head coach gave me one advice and one promise. He said, if you go back to Europe, I want you to wrestle every show possible. And I promise you, when you come back, we are going to give you another chance. So I did exactly what he told me. I went back to Europe and I paid my dues. I wrestled every show possible. And sometimes it means you drive your car for 13 hours just to wrestle a 5-minute match in front of 20 people, and you drive 13 hours back. And the promoters only pay you the gas money. I did that not only for one time, I did that for the next few years to come. I wrestled on dirty floors in cold halls or even in the car. And after 5 years, I wrestled in about 15 countries. I competed in more than 300 matches, sometimes in front of 50 people, sometimes in front of 5,000. But in that time period, I also traveled back and forth to the United States. But unfortunately, the guy who promised me the second chance didn't work for the company anymore. And you see, I always had to start from zero again. This business is running on such a fast-paced level that it doesn't matter what you did yesterday and what somebody told you yesterday. But this time I found myself back in Las Vegas, and my 7th time to the US after Atlanta, but this time was different. See, everything we do comes with a price. And I was there in Las Vegas in my final days as a professional wrestler. There was the chance again. but my body told me not to take it. In the last 7 years, I experienced injuries like broken bones, broken ribs, concussions, dislocated joints, and I even tear my eardrum. And the only question I had left at 3 a.m. in the morning in Las Vegas was, what went wrong? And out of the blue, I remembered my days at the monastery when I was a kid. There was an old monk who told me one very particular thing. He said, people get lost in doing because they're so busy running after things. Invest into being, and you will see clearly, and you will find yourself and see the world with new eyes. And this message hit me right in the heart 15 years later as I hit rock bottom right there in Las Vegas. See, I lived my life in the last 27 years, and especially in the last 7 years, in the have, do, and be method. Which means, if I only have and sign this contract, I could wrestle in front of thousands of people on a daily basis and get paid great money for it, and I will finally be a happy and fulfilled person. Guess what? I was not. I was not, because I invested in the wrong things at first. And I knew I have to turn my life completely around and invest into one thing only. So I had to let go of the having part, letting go of the doing part, and invest and practice being. So I was this guy who made this decision, and I became that guy who turned his life completely around. I went back to Europe and I checked in a Buddhist temple to practice Zen. As the abbot of the temple came to me, he just said one thing. He said, I want you to stop everything. Stop running, stop chasing, stop knocking on closed doors. Just sit with us and meditate with us, and the world will come to you. At some point, something will open up and you will discover something that you have not discovered yet. So I did exactly what he told me. I sat for hours, for days, for weeks and months to come. And at some point, something opened up. It was just like the clouds of my life disappeared and I could see the blue sky for the first time in my life. And the blue sky became my purpose for life. See, I always loved to coach people, either in the gym or in the wrestling ring. But before I could help and train others, I have to heal myself first. I needed to come up with a whole new way of training. So I sat longer, and at some point, I got inspired with moving and using my body in such a way that I can become pain-free, stronger, more aware, and more energetic than ever before. And it happened. And it happened effortlessly. And after investing in that for the next few months, this idea became a method. And at some point, I was ready to bring it to the people and try to serve them. So I went back to the country I always thought I don't belong, and I made peace with it. Because I made peace with myself before. And with the less money I had, I found a tiny little apartment that I had to rebuild and start my new beginning and to live my new purpose. See, starting from zero was something that wrestling taught me and Zen taught me on how to let go and how to go all in. And when everything was ready and I was ready to welcome clients to teach my method, no one showed up. No one showed up after the first day, not after a month, and not after 2 months. My younger self would have become very nervous, frustrated, and angry, but my new self remained calm and peaceful because I knew if I sit long enough and just work on myself, the world will come to me. After 3 months, the first client showed up, and a couple of months later, I had 100 clients. And now, 5 years later, everything developed. As I developed and upgraded my inner world, so did my outer world. So within, so without. I have arrived, I am fulfilled, and I am beyond grateful. But this is not about the method and not about success. This is about the message of trust, honest and sometimes painful self-reflection, and practice the art of being. And this chance came to me, and I took it. And the funny thing is, I haven't stood in a wrestling ring for years, not even thought about wrestling. And a while ago, I got a phone call from a famous promoter for a very famous wrestling promotion in the United States, and I got offered one last wrestling match. This would be a wrestling match I would have dreamed about in my 7-year wrestling period. But this time, I have the freedom to take this chance or not. Just sit, and I guarantee you, if you work on yourself and on yourself only, the world will come to you. Thank you.